Oh, look at his face. He's so angry right now. This is ridiculous, man. This is not a game you should lose, especially if you scout it.
Fuel's coming down. Myungshik is pissed in that mood. Myungshik just hiding his face at this point. That's for sure. Myungshik really angry.
That was a game that probably in practice he would never lose.
Right.
Against anyone, really.
And this match was crappy. It was a crappy match.
Oh, that's never supposed to happen. That's never supposed to happen.
Actually, like Rogue against Party, that was actually like a human sacrifice. We're like, and go, and then Party just like, like rips his heart out.
If you've played video games at all, you've played video games badly. Even if you're an all-natural, Chad mode, sizzling 600 IQ gamer, some bad days and misplays are inevitable. For most of us though, if you play poorly, you lose very little. A bet with a friend, bragging rights, maybe a controller. But ask anyone who plays games, and they will tell you even the pettiest losses owing to bad play can be rage-inducing and soul-crushing enough. So imagine if there were a lot on the line. Not just pride, prize money, or a professional career, but in fact your reputation and your freedom.
And there he is!
Make some noise for Marineking!
This is the story of a video game god brought low, not just by a dwindling career in a struggling game, but by one match, one terrible stretch at a keyboard, resulting in a loss so bad, many assumed it could only be intentional, and therefore criminal. Lee Jung-hoon, aka Marineking, or Marineking Prime, was for a time synonymous with the concept of skill in video games. This isn't a video on the history of Starcraft, but suffice it to say, he rocketed into Starcraft 2 at its launch and immediately changed everything. Amongst other things, he proved that being good was not just about making the most units, but in fact, how you use them. For example, near the launch of the game, many people would say that Zerg was unbeatable because they would make a million banelings and then just do this.
But there's a ton of banelings here. He's got to be careful. Here they come. The Marines running back. Mutas come up and oh my God. He kills all of the Marines. They're gonna.
And then Marineking did this.
Lining up over here. So many Marines. He's got to be careful though. Here come the speed banes. And
Nice control.
Oh!
And pretty much everyone playing the game was like,
I like seeing that. It's good work. It's really good work.
add to that, Marineking was a character, even when parked in a chair staring at a monitor. He would talk trash, celebrate, rage, even cry, and his personality matched his play. Aggressive, bold, flashy, a little wild and hyperactive at times, but always magnetic and interesting. What's more, he was known for fighting his losses to the bitter end, and sometimes way past it, because that's the kind of player he was. It didn't matter if he was 99% dead, he would fight on. He hated losing. And owing to his exciting play and personal charisma, he became one of the players that seemed to appeal to both Korean and foreign fans. And for the first 2 years or so of StarCraft 2, his results remained very strong, and he was, arguably, the fan favorite, the most beloved player.
There's a sea of fans who have been supporting you all weekend long. Is there anything you'd like to say to all your foreign fans? I love you.
Time, everybody, for day 2 of the SPL, 2015's SPL, that is. A new season has already started yesterday, and it continues today, Valdez.
I'm so happy to be back today. We have
A few years fly by, and suddenly it's early 2015. StarCraft 2 had been out for 5 years and had changed a lot. Not only that, the esports scene around it had dramatically transformed. By at least 2013, or even earlier, it was clear that StarCraft 2 would never maintain its spot as the biggest esport. Marineking knew this as well as anyone, having bounced over to League of Legends for a few months in 2013 to 2014, before returning to StarCraft 2. What's more, his play had steadily declined since about 2012, while younger players had dramatically improved. With stiffer competition and declining viewership, snagging a spot on one of the 8 major Starcraft teams in Korea was getting much harder. There wasn't as much money in Starcraft, so if a team drafted you, you had better show decent play. Even if you were a fan favorite, you had to pull your weight.
It's a really hard time for everybody because when these other teams are signing other players from other games, you're starting to wonder, oh, am I going to get re-signed? Am I going to get that contract again? Am I going to have a place in a few months? If I don't win this, are they just going to be like, well, you know, we got the other guys instead of you because you actually just dropped out of Code A and you're not on TV, so we can't put sponsors on your jacket and, you know, have you do well for us because you're not playing in anything else.
And this is where Marineking was really struggling. While he still had fans in 2015, his play hadn't just fallen off a bit, he was kind of trash. Not only were others improving, but he refused to adapt. Where once he was the innovator, he eventually became known for stubbornly sticking to an obsolete style, which was often overly aggressive and weak to a more evolved meta.
Once again, the same thing has happened that we saw from stats. Like, Marineking is trying to find a way in. What am I watching? What year is it? What year is it, Moonblade? Is this 2011?
He was losing games consistently.
But this is, I don't know, this is like so bad for Marineking because he's just losing more and more important games, and we all know the way that affects Marineking.
It seemed to many that he was lucky to have found a spot on a bottom-tier team, MVP, where his results fluctuated between mediocre and abysmal. And by his March 24th, 2015 game against a top Zerg player named Bjol in an important team match, all that pressure, all that stress, all that disappointment came to a head, resulting in what was probably the worst game of professional StarCraft ever. But in order to explain why this game was so bad, I have to break down some StarCraft strategy. Don't turn off the video. It'll be quick, I promise. And if you're an experienced player, you don't want to hear somewhat oversimplified strategy, skip to this time on screen here. In StarCraft, there is a building type called static defense. These buildings are cannons, bunkers, these pokeboys called spine crawlers, stuff like that. Basically, buildings that can fight. The word static in their name refers to the fact that they're immobile, because most of them can't move. And the defense part of the name, well, that's more of a lie, or call it a marketing myth on the part of Blizzard. The point is, it can defend, attack attacks, defend attacks, attack defenses, and it kills everything. But why is static defense so dangerous? Well, it's not once everyone has big armies and upgrades. But in the early game, there's a good reason why it's so strong. The truth is this: unlike early game units, Zerglings, Marines, and Zealots, static defense costs a lot and can't move. So to be balanced when these buildings actually do fight, they're overpowered. That's the trade-off. They can't retreat, they can't flank, they can't run across the map and kill you, but if they are engaged, they will fuck early game units up. They have bigger health pools, stronger attacks, better range. They're just really strong. And literally since the beginning of StarCraft 1, gamers were like, wait, these things wreck people on defense, so what if
I used them for static offense?
And with that, an incredibly obnoxious strategy was born. And ever since, across StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, every race has employed some version of this strategy. At the start of the game, you send a worker across the map, you build static defense in your opponent's base, and then defend them to death. That's it. That's the strategy. StarCraft's like, you gotta be smart, dude. Like, it's like chess, like Napoleon and stuff. But also, like, it's like a sport. Like, you gotta be strong. Okay. We're nearing the end here, I swear. In the case of Zerg, the race relevant to this 2015 match, this strategy is particularly weird. See, Zerg static defense is really strong, in part because it isn't actually static. it can move. Not quickly or easily, but you can uproot these Pokeboys from one spot and plant them somewhere else. The problem is they can only be planted on creep, this purple goop. And the only way to spread creep to your opponent's base in the early game is by making a hatchery, the town hall structure, in or near their starting location. So it's a weird looking strategy, but if pulled off successfully, it goes like this. You put down a hatchery near the enemy, which finishes. You make a queen from the hatchery, which can help attack, and, importantly, spread goop. You make workers from the hatchery to build Pokeboys. And when the goop is spread enough, you move the Pokeboys into their base. Then they die. This strategy, though strange, was at one time very common and pretty hard to stop. The key to defending it is reacting quickly enough. If you see it right away, you can just kill it while everything's still building. But if you're not 100% certain that it's coming or spot it kind of late, you have to quickly build your own defenses and prepare for a longer siege. The main thing you cannot do is just not react. You can't sit there and try to play a normal game like nothing's happening. That's a guaranteed loss, a 100% chance of failure. Of course, at the pro level, that could never happen. Which brings us back to Marineking and the worst match in Starcraft history. Before the match even starts, everything indicates that this head-to-head is not going to go Marineking's way. From his terrible record to his grim expression, he is the opposite of the confident Marineking of old. The match starts, and immediately Beal sends a drone across the map to make a hatchery.
For this, okay then.
But Marineking gets lucky. He opens with a quick worker scout and sees almost enough information to basically know this is coming, or at least be very suspicious.
Like, Oakley, you definitely know that there's going to be a hatch on the map because, like, the timing of the pool is late as well. There's not enough gas sort of mined from the Zerg's base to warrant any sort of earlier extractor. So he knows, like...
So, given everything he's seen, given the prevalence of the proxy hatch in that meta, Marineking knows he should look for a hatch nearby his base. And for a second there, it appears that he does exactly that with this little guy, the Reaper.
He's just sitting here. There we go, Spinecrawler. Oh, that Reaper is so close to scouting it.
He sees it.
Oh.
And this is where things got truly bizarre. Up until this point, Marineking was responding fine, and he moves his Reaper, a scouting unit, down to check for a hatchery. And he sees it. In the early game like this, when you're moving your units around, you're almost always looking at them. And when you're looking at them, you see what they see. And this Reaper just spotted creep and a Spinecrawler being built. And even if he didn't follow the Reaper's vision, what it just saw now appears on his minimap. And because he's a pro gamer, he's meant to look at this minimap and that red dot on it where the Spinecrawler is about 10 times a second. Now all Marineking has to do is respond. In fact, he's early to the party. He knows this is coming before Beal is ready, so he just has to fight it. I'm just gonna play this clip through. Note the utter confusion from the casters.
Crawler. Oh, that Reaper is so close to scouting it.
He sees it.
Oh. Well, if he sees it, he could actually just...
Why wouldn't he shoot at it?
Right-click down that Spinecrawler.
Maybe he wants to make him think he doesn't know.
Wait. Yeah, he literally sees it.
Maybe he just wants to make him think he doesn't know.
Well, I think at this point you could just simply kill it and, like, delay everything and win the game with Reapers.
Okay, now he realizes. I think he may just simply not have seen it.
Well, I think he still hasn't seen it. It's a big problem.
I don't actually understand.
He's going
on the minimap straight up.
Yeah, I mean, it's straight up his, man. There's a red dot there. Maybe
if he was trying to hide the fact that he saw it so he could crush it or something weird like that, which doesn't even really make that much sense. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. He definitely wouldn't be making a reactor on his barracks right now.
No, he's going into Hellions from here.
He has no idea, man.
That is not a useful sort of thing at this point. But we'll see exactly how Biel is going to play this.
Okay, now he's sending something over there. What's he sending? No, he's just making a CC. He
has no idea.
Oh my god.
He has no idea. He is going to...
This was the moment where the game went from merely misplayed to inexplicably bad. Even as a pro gamer, it's possible to scout your opponent and still not realize what's coming. It's possible to see things with your units, but not with your own eyes. And it is possible to miss crucial information on your minimap for over a minute, though that's pretty hard. But to do all three of these things at once when really there could only be one build coming was kind of beyond belief. Add to that, Marineking's choice to go third command center wasn't just a bad move, it was like the worst possible move. And his slowness to react to the creep that's in his base that he can see is to this day unlike anything else I've ever seen in Starcraft. And certain people decided at this moment that this didn't look like a guy trying and failing to win. This looked like a guy trying to lose.
He has no idea.
Oh my god.
He has no idea. He is gonna be so tilted in just a moment.
I think, man, I'm telling you, his face looks like he's already tilted. Hey, you see that stuff coming in your base, man? I'm telling you, it's real. Yo, it's in there.
Hey, look at his face now. He's like, oh, what? Oh, what? Now Ling Speed is about to finish. Spine crawlers are in the base.
And at this point, despite actually some pretty good micro, Marineking dies brutally. There is no defending. I mean, watch how quickly the spine crawlers kill him.
Well, that's going to be it. I mean, Marineking leaves games late. He's got a bunker trying to get up here. Bill takes a sip of water, takes hands off the keyboard.
He's like, yep.
GG.
Wow. That happened.
That just happened, and CJ cannot be feeling better. Whoa, that was real. That just happened.
That's pretty embarrassing, I gotta say, especially considering he saw it. He could have killed it. He could have actually just killed it with 2 Reapers. Canceled every spine crawler.
The fact that he didn't see that was so out there to me. I was like, he just simply didn't even see it. It was right there, plain as day.
He didn't check his minimap, man.
Oh boy, that was like, well, I couldn't even believe it. In fact, I still don't even believe it. I still don't even believe it.
That's pretty rough.
I cannot believe that. I cannot believe I just watched that happen in the highest level of Starcraft 2 team league in the world.
While the other team celebrated, Marineking was no doubt experiencing a new low. And it wasn't just about having to apologize to his team for an embarrassing loss to add to his terrible record. That, at this point, was the least of his worries. Because when even casters are talking about how bad your play was, you can probably guess that there's another accusation coming. Match fixing. Indeed, thousands of fans at that very moment were thinking, typing, and saying that this loss was not a horrible mistake, but an intentional loss on the part of Marineking. A pre-planned throw, a scripted dive, and that was a big fucking deal. See, the shadow of match fixing, that is, a player or players conspiring to predetermine the outcome of matches, had long loomed over the StarCraft 2 scene. In 2010, StarCraft 1's pro scene, a mainstream fixture of 21st century Korean culture, was almost killed by a match-fixing scandal.
Police in South Korea are investigating reports that professional players of an online strategy game accepted bribes to fix matches in the largest esports scandal in history. According to the BBC, Starcraft is an enormously popular online game in the country.
The Korean fans and public seemed to have an extra negative reaction to match fixing. Not just disappointment and anger with the guilty players, but exasperation with the entire esport. Many Korean fans stopped watching StarCraft 1 because, to their minds, they could never again be sure if any outcome was real. As a result, viewership plunged, sponsors left, and 4 major teams instantly collapsed. So, rightly or wrongly, one scandal created the perception that the entire scene was tainted.
아니 이 정도는 저희 팀에서 이제 그게 있었어요. 야 주장한 사람들 이제 주장한 사람들은 다 집에 가 했는데 그 다음 날 집에 갔는데 숙소에 들어왔는데 6명이 있는 거야. 숙소에 6명이 있는 거야.
난 납치당한 줄 알았잖아 우리 팀원들.
그러니까 난 다 납치당한 줄 알았어 진짜로.
뭐 팀이 있었고 여기도 있는데. 그 하나만 잡혔다 막 그런 얘기가 있어요.
맞아요. 그래가지고 우리 팀 감독님이 이거는 진짜로
다 잡아야 된다.
다 싹 다 잡아서 넣어야 된다. 싹 다 잡아서 넣어야 된다라고 하는데 싹 다 잡아서 넣으면 선수가 없는 거야. 선수가 없어.
Not only that, but for those players in any way involved in match fixing, a lifelong expulsion from professional play was just the beginning. Many of those caught in the Starcraft 1 scandal had huge fines levied against them and faced probation and even jail time. The reputational costs were even higher. The face of the 2010 match-fixing scandal, the Zerg player Savior, was basically excommunicated from society. He remains a taboo subject in Korea and is literally not allowed to be mentioned on official StarCraft broadcasts to this day. They can't even say his name like he's Voldemort. I'm not joking.
But what's so important in StarCraft and what's held to the highest in competition in general is the sanctity of the game. If we start throwing matches and taking money for that, then it completely delegitimizes everything. If you go to BlizzCon stuff, his picture is struck and removed. He is blackballed from Korea. It's like, that's the degree of how bad this is in gaming and competition. If you do this, you are removed from the history books. You cannot be a part of it because it touches other people.
For many years, StarCraft 2 and its pros had avoided this fate. However, in early 2015, rumblings and rumors of match fixing began to swirl. There were reports of pro matches with incredibly suspicious betting lines on gambling websites, murmurings of players being approached to throw matches, and suspicion of smaller online tournaments being rigged and backed by match fixers. In fact, Marineking himself retweeted a twitlonger from Total Biscuit about these rigged tournaments not long before this fateful match. And not long after this match, Pro League announced they would be removing the official game time from all matches in order to try to combat illegal bets they believed were riding on the games. The scene was on guard and paranoid, and for good reason. So, if you were going to play a suspiciously bad match in a professional StarCraft 2 tournament, this was the exact wrong time to do it. What's worse, every particular of the situation looked terrible for Marineking. For example, it didn't help that the moment the match went down, both Korean and foreign fans took to the internet to say, "We vote to burn Marineking at the stake for being a cheating, lying match fixer." Add to that, there was a sizable community of Korean gamblers who would bet on these matches. To be clear, 99% of them were not involved in match fixing, but who had a pretty toxic relationship with the pros. This community would frequently berate players who played poorly and were known to hurl accusations of cheating left and right. Many gamblers, it seems, had it out for Marineking for all the times he'd underperformed and lost them money. Moreover, because a serious accusation of match fixing was enough to truly damage all of professional StarCraft 2, it wouldn't be brushed aside by KESPA, the South Korean government agency that controls and regulates esports with the management style of their northern neighbors. Seriously, this was an organization that would dictate your bedtime to you if you were a pro player. So if you were accused of a felony that could ruin the entire esport, you better believe they'd be on your ass. So what did all this mean for Marineking? Well, judging from the outside, at the time, I think you could fairly say he was fucked. And sure enough, KESPA launched an internal investigation. Marineking was suspended from all professional play. He wasn't allowed to stream. He went quiet on all social media. He stopped appearing in public, including at StarCraft events. It was like he disappeared. The details of how this investigation actually went aren't really public, but from what I've read, they basically come in and take your computer, your phone, access to all your social media accounts, and, of course, review the game's replay. They also took Marineking into a room and interrogated him for hours at a time, multiple times. In essence, it's handled as a criminal matter. The primary thing they search for in these investigations is if anyone reached out to you to manipulate matches, and until they clear you of that charge, you're basically semi-arrested. People in the foreign StarCraft scene have long joked about the maybe real, maybe fake KESPA jail. Well, this was the real KESPA jail. living under extreme suspicion from teammates and coaches in some strange sort of house arrest in the team house with all your electronics and access to the outside world taken away. Then again, if Marineking was found guilty, his time in Kespa jail might only be a preview of the real thing.
Call me anytime if Marineking doesn't see a spine crawler or something you really want to talk about that. Like, probably tell you like more than you want to know about what Koreans are saying about it and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, now that you said that, can you give me like 2 seconds on what do the Koreans say about it?
Like, everyone is really harsh to him. Everyone's really mean about it. Like, Kespa did like a full investigation. You know, a full Kespa investigation means they take his cell phone away, they search all of his text messages, take his computer away, search everything that's on his computer, his whole hard drive and stuff like that. Like, making sure there's like no suspicious stuff going on. He's not talking to anybody, communicating to anybody about this sort of thing. Checking phone call records and stuff like that.
Jesus.
Every there's just no evidence that he cheated, and so everyone's kind of eventually, I mean, not cheated, match fixed. He definitely didn't cheat.
About a month after the match, on April 20th, MVP, Marineking's team, released a statement concluding that after a thorough internal investigation where they, quote, kinda grilled Marineking a lot, they found zero evidence of match fixing. Their conclusion was the guy played a really bad game, and that the pressure he was putting on himself to win was causing him to massively underperform. And with that, Marineking, at least in the eyes of Kespa, was off the hook. Still, Marineking's reputation and career took a major hit. In the same statement, MVP relieved him of his role as the team's captain. He still was not appearing with the rest of the team at tournaments. He was still not streaming or speaking publicly. And still, many fans were accusing him of match fixing. Fortunately for Marineking, continued suspicion on him would mean continued suspicion around the entire esport, and Kespa couldn't have that. So began Kespa's full court press to establish that this game, at least, was not match fixed. So, on May 29th, 2015, Kanata, probably the most trusted and beloved figure in Korean Starcraft 2, conducted a phone interview with Marineking about this very match. In it, Marineking revealed that, basically, the entire match was a product of nerves, misreads, and bad play. He said he mistook BL's strategy as a fast Zergling rush opener, an attack that would have come from this direction, and that he knew he could parry with a wall off in a much less committed defense. He also revealed that his Reaper moving downward to glimpse the hatchery, that move that looked like a scout, was really a mistake. He didn't even realize it had seen anything because he didn't even mean to move it there at all. As for the proxy hatch build and its responses, he said he basically never practiced against the build and hadn't seen it used on that map, so it just wasn't on his mind. But Kespa wasn't done. Soon after the interview with Kanata, the Secretary General of Kespa gave an interview on this specific game to Team Liquid, a totally unheard of move, basically telling the foreign scene that the Korean government itself had reached the conclusion that this was not a rigged game. Interestingly, the Secretary General expressed real concern about match fixing in StarCraft 2 broadly, but was clear that this specific game was not rigged. Fortunately, these stamps of approval and Marineking's explanations helped relieve a lot of the suspicion. Marineking's version of events had the ring of truth, of honest-to-God bad play. Misread builds, that is, prepping for one strategy when your opponent is really doing another, are the punches you don't see of StarCraft. It's very easy to confidently prepare for something that just isn't coming, and then straight up lose to whatever is. Eventually, most of the community was willing to accept that a volatile player with a long history of nervous, bad performances might have just really messed up.
And everyone's like, is this guy match fixing? Is this guy match fixing? And I was the only guy thinking he wasn't match fixing. And the reason I didn't think he was match fixing was because I legitimately thought Marineking was dumb enough and bad enough to do this. Like, that's And that's why I never wrote about it, because it's like it's kind of cruel to just straight out say, no, I actually think he's bad enough.
And that brutal conclusion, in a sad way, meant vindication for Marineking.
If chess was the war game of the past millennium, video games may be the war games of the next period of human existence.
Basically, you have to juggle your economy whilst at the same time trying to work out what your opponent's doing and how their economy's going and what they're building.
Starcraft was the one that broke through to become a mass phenomenon, with professional players and leagues and stadiums full of tens of thousands of spectators. Other excellent games have followed, but Starcraft was the first big one.
Unfortunately for professional Starcraft 2, the events that would most convincingly clear Marineking's name would also stain the entire esport and cause the collapse many had long feared. On October 19, 2015, the Chongwon Prosecutor's Office released a report unmasking extensive match fixing in the Korean StarCraft 2 scene, involving players, sponsors, and coaches throughout the year of 2015. Without going into too much detail, basically they found that shady underworld figures, or financial backers, were approaching players or coaches through brokers who would pay them to lose matches. The backers, in turn, would profit from winning bets on these rigged games. As a continuation of this investigation, in January 2016, some of the biggest name players in StarCraft 2 were also charged. Life, the world champion and one of the most famous players in the entire esport, was arrested for match fixing. And to be clear, he did end up in jail. I emphasize this point because many have incorrectly said, well, Life didn't actually serve time, he just got probation. While he did not end up serving his prison sentence, his appeal clearly states that he was stuck in jail for a few months, as were others caught in the scandal. So, was doing time a possibility for anyone caught match fixing? Very much so. Anyway, in the weeks following Life's arrest, financial backers, brokers, and esports journalists in Korea would also be charged in connection with the match-fixing schemes. The scandal, which had long been hinted at and alluded to throughout 2015, had a predictable impact on StarCraft 2 in Korea. Basically, it kinda crippled it. I know StarCraft fans, myself included, are resistant to this dead game narrative, but the facts are the facts. Korean sponsors and fans, already somewhat disenchanted with StarCraft 2, turned their backs on what they viewed as an entirely tainted scene. Look no further than the Kespa teams, which had given young pro gamers a recruitment system, salaries, practice partners, coaching staffs, and a means of steadily building their skills. These teams collapsed before the year was out. Major tournaments shut down. Pros retired. The fear that StarCraft 2 would suffer a repeat of StarCraft 1's cheating scandal had come to fruition. And yet, through it all, through the gambling ring shut down, champions in handcuffs, and coaches indicted, one name never came up. Of the many rigged matches uncovered, one was never mentioned. And for Marineking at least, that was as close to proof of innocence as he was ever gonna get.
So Marineking was beaten at his own game.
Yeah.
But it is Marineking, and it will end like my all of the games I've casted of Marineking. He will now lift the command center in a futile attempt to draw this game out for another 3.5 minutes.
Indeed.
In hindsight, it's easy to see how some truly terrible play in a climate of suspicion caused a rush to judgment. That rush to judgment nearly destroyed the life of a guy who was almost certainly innocent. In so revering the StarCraft pros, especially legends like Marineking, many fans forgot that they're human, that they can mess up. Indeed, the entire premise that a rigged match would involve really bad play turned out to be faulty. Most telling of all, maybe, is the fact that many fans, myself included, watched those actually rigged matches by cheating players and never suspected a thing. It seemed that when players were actually trying to lose matches, their play always appeared rusty or sloppy. They took a little edge off their game. But the last thing they wanted it to look like was total trash. And what happened to Marineking? Well, in the end, he followed the exodus of many Korean StarCraft 2 pros into retirement in early 2016. He had no blazing comeback or last hurrah, but he is remembered, I think rightly, as one of the most exciting and interesting players of all time. Part of that excitement stemmed from the fact that he could, at times, play like a god, and then turn right around and play like garbage. And despite this history of major mess-ups and his being cleared in multiple investigations, some people will always claim he match-fixed. And you can't really, finally, disprove that accusation. Match-fixing is, at base, a thought crime. The crime of deciding to not do your best. And no one can know what was in his head during that game. But if we were to judge him by appearances, it has to be said, no matter how well he was playing, it never looked like he didn't give a shit. Like the game was just a paycheck for him with no pride on the line. If anything, part of why I like the guy so much was the fact that no matter how his play looked, he always looked like he was giving it his all